As troops fight and die, blasting Manuel Noriega's command post in an early morning attack. Waves of helicopters swoop in as the United States invades Panama. Noriega is ousted but remains at large. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rattle reporting. Good evening. More than 20,000 U.S. soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors launched their attack in the early morning darkness. They were backed by swarms of helicopters, ships, and planes. By late today, they had taken control of much of the country, but their chief target, their main mission, General Manuel Noriega, escaped. For the latest status report on how the fighting is going, it's still going on, we go live now to David Martin at the Defense Department. David, good evening.
Good evening, Dan. The Pentagon says all organized resistance from Panamanian defense forces has ended and the canal is functioning again, but the news is not all good. American casualties are now put at 15 dead and 59 wounded. So far, only two have been identified by name: Marine Corporal Gareth Isaac of Greenville, South Carolina, and Army Corporal Ivan Perez of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. 3 Navy SEALs are also among the dead. A lot of the PDF forces have melted into the jungle and the city, and no one knows for sure whether they plan to continue to fight on. The U.S. Army now faces the prospect of having to go through Panama City, population 1 million, house by house, rooting out the remaining resistance. That job will be done starting tomorrow by a brigade from the 7th Infantry Division, which is still arriving in Panama from California. And last but not least, Manuel Noriega still remains at large with no reported sightings today. Although just a few moments ago, the White House announced that it is offering a $1 million reward for the capture of Noriega and another $150 for every gun turned in by Panamanian citizens. Dan?
Thank you, David. There was a paratroop airdrop late this afternoon to quell some fighting in and around Panama City. The Pentagon also announced today that 1 American civilian had been killed in addition to the military personnel. More than 60 Panamanians at a minimum are reported to have died. An undetermined number of Americans are said to be in the hands of loyal Noriega forces tonight. One of them is a CBS Evening News producer-journalist. Correspondent Juan Vasquez has our report on the scene in Panama City.
Moments after the White House announced the military operation to capture Noriega, the glow from the fire of the general's military headquarters illuminated the night sky of Panama City. It was one of the first targets attacked by the American forces, but Noriega wasn't there, and many of his officers managed to get out disguised as civilians. Witnesses said the fighting around the command post was some of the heaviest in the city, and much of the surrounding neighborhood was destroyed as a result. By dawn, helicopters deployed to the eastern part of the city to seize other military installations. In some neighborhoods, the residents came out to welcome the American soldiers. Those who had never supported Noriega and those who had grown to fear him were overjoyed.
We were a people held hostage by a narco-military Idi Amin of the Americas, and radical action of some sort was required.
Meanwhile, Noriega loyalists in civilian clothes roamed the streets. In 2 separate incidents, armed men entered the Marriott Hotel and took American hostages.
Then they asked us for our identifications, and they started to ask for all the Americans to identify themselves and to get up from the floor.
One of the hostages who was later released was reporter Lindsey Grusin of the New York Times. He told CBS News he was threatened with death. At one point, one of them pointed his AK-47 at my head and made some trigger-pulling sounds. At another point, he stuck it up against my teeth and said, "A lot of Panamanians have died. Don't believe for a moment I won't kill you." CBS Evening News producer John Meyerson was marched out of the hotel at gunpoint. His whereabouts remain unknown. The hostage-takers may be members of the so-called pro-Noriega Dignity Battalion. Last May, they attacked opposition presidential candidate Guillermo Endara and running mate Billy Ford, as Noriega declared the results of the national election null and void. Today, Endara and Ford were sworn in as the rightful leaders of the country because the United States claimed they were the recognized winners of that election. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Panama City.
The transport planes carried 10,000 U.S. soldiers from California's Fort Ord and in the south from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Georgia's Fort Benning, and Fort Polk in Louisiana. By all reports, the heaviest fighting has taken place at the southern end of the canal in and around Panama City itself. Combat also is reported in Colón, Panama's second largest city, at the canal's northern terminus. But the search for Noriega could lead as far away as his home province of Chiriquí. That's jungle territory up near the Costa Rican border, where Noriega has an airstrip and strong popular support. For more on the hunt for Noriega and how the U.S. attack was planned and carried out, we return to David Martin at the Defense Department.
At 1 a.m., a force of 24,000 American soldiers swung into action from coast to coast across Panama, dividing the country into 5 separate areas of operation. Nearly half the troops were airlifted from the U.S., with reinforcements still moving in this afternoon. Some were Army Rangers who parachuted in to block units believed loyal to Noriega from coming to his rescue. Paratroopers also seized the international airport. Marines took control of the Bridge of the Americas and set up security around Howard Air Force Base, the main air link to the U.S. The heaviest fighting took place in the vicinity of Panama City, where a force led by tanks moved in to seize Noriega's headquarters, while another unit moved in by helicopter to block a Panamanian unit based at Fort Amador. It was a complex plan put into effect on short notice, but it had been in the works for months.
The order went out late on Sunday to implement a plan that had been in existence for some time. It was one of the first items I was briefed on when I became Secretary of Defense last spring.
The object was to seal off the units loyal to Noriega and give them a choice: fight against overwhelming odds or surrender. U.S. military officers called up Panamanian units and told them, in effect, "This is suicide, pack it in."
They were, a number of them, quite loyal to General Noriega, and so we were prepared for that and went down in sufficient force. So they did resist. They didn't resist for long. Some fought hard and some didn't fight hardly at all.
Still, American forces took considerable casualties. Those wounded most seriously were airlifted today to a military hospital in Texas. In the attack, the big one got away, even though U.S. intelligence had been tracking his movements for months and believed he was in one of 2 locations. Officials now suspect Noriega detected the increased air traffic at Howard Air Force Base in the hours before the invasion and fled to another hideout. Even so, officials insist he is no longer a threat.
We have decapitated him from the dictatorship of this country, and he is now a fugitive and will be treated as such. And we will chase him and we'll find him.
Once U.S. officials were outraged at Noriega. Today, they ridiculed him.
It's been some years since General Mr. Noriega, the fugitive, has been seen in the jungle, living in the jungle. He's used to a different kind of lifestyle, and I'm not quite sure he would be up to being chased around the countryside by Army Rangers.
Dan, the Pentagon had hoped to complete what it calls mopping up within 3 days, but late today a Pentagon briefer said military police may have to remain in Panama indefinitely.
Thanks, David. President Bush's only public comment on his decision to move against the Panamanians in Noriega came in a 6-minute statement early this morning. Then, in a rolling series of briefings by other U.S. officials during the day, the United States has cited a number of what it calls legal grounds for the action: self-defense, the Panama Canal treaties, and a recent Justice Department opinion that the United States does have a right under international law to seize an indicted drug smuggler abroad, a drug smuggler such as Noriega. CBS News White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews has more now on President Bush's decision to change course and act now. Wyatt?
Dan, good evening. The president's decision today to mount what has clearly become America's largest combat operation since the days of the Vietnam War marks a sharp reversal for a president who spent most of his 11 months in office proving just how cautious he is, or as his critics would charge, just how timid he is.
Twice before, Mr. Bush shied away from military confrontations with Noriega, hesitating last May after goon squads publicly flogged leaders of the opposition, and keeping his distance from a coup attempt just 2 months ago because it seemed too risky.
I have at stake the lives of American kids, and I am not going to easily thrust them into a battle unless I feel comfortable with it.
But the president's fuse grew shorter this weekend. Noriega declared a state of war with America. An unarmed Marine was then gunned down at a checkpoint. A Navy couple was beaten and threatened. The president decided to act on Sunday, but the last straw was a mysterious tip the U.S. could neither confirm nor ignore.
We received an intelligence report that General Noriega was considering launching an urban commando attack on American citizens in a residential neighborhood.
General Noriega's reckless threats and attacks upon Americans in Panama created an imminent danger to the 35,000 American citizens in Panama. As president, I have no higher obligation than to safeguard the lives of American citizens.
This time, the president abandoned his fabled caution in favor of an invasion because he thought that this time he would take a greater risk by sitting still and allowing Noriega to strike first. Dan?
Wyatt, thanks. Our coverage of the fighting that's still going on in Panama continues in a moment, so stay here with us.
I have just the thing for that cold.
Most kids think that medicine has to taste bad, but not grape-flavored Dimetapp Elixir.
You like Dimetapp?
Grape-flavored Dimetapp Elixir. It relieves kids as well as colds.
Oh no! Oh, oui.
No one says no to cocoa.
That'll be a charge.
We interrupt this purchase for a reminder.
Don't forget, Santa.
'Tis the season to be choosy.
La 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 la.
That's it.
So choose the card that actually pays you cash back for every charge. The Discover card.
That's a great idea.
You sure know how to pick 'em. It pays to Discover, the card that pays you back.
Succulent shrimp primavera. Juicy barbecued chicken. Luscious pot roast. Watching your cholesterol? Instead of saying goodbye to food like this, say hello to this. Stouffer's new right course.
Baby, it's alright. Baby, it's right course.
11 great tasting entrees with controlled amounts of cholesterol, fat, and sodium. Right course. One taste, and you'll know Stouffer's got it all right.
Much of the early reaction to the U.S. military strike in Panama is along predictable lines, including some old-line, hard-line talk from Moscow. The Soviet Foreign Ministry called for international condemnation of what it termed, and I quote, U.S. gunboat diplomacy. CBS News chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer has other reaction tonight from Capitol Hill and beyond. Bob, good evening.
Dan, for the most part, the reaction here was overwhelmingly bipartisan in support, most of the Democrats taking their lead from the House Speaker, Thomas Foley.
American troops are in the field when casualties are being taken. Under these circumstances, it's, I think, not the proper time for a lot of complicated debate.
Republicans saw it as a defining moment for the president.
It was a time in which the president asserted his own leadership, did so effectively, and that he will speak with a voice that will be heard much more clearly.
Reaction from Latin America was far less positive. In Nicaragua, there were angry demonstrations at the U.S. Embassy as Nicaragua's UN ambassador blasted the U.S. action.
The United States does not have any legal or ethical right to intervene in other countries' affairs.
As Peru recalled its U.S. ambassador in protest, the Organization of American States met an emergency session in Washington. It refused to seat the representative of the new U.S.-backed Panamanian government, but allowed Noriega's ambassador to denounce the administration.
All the people of Panama asks only one thing from this organization: the overwhelming and total condemnation of this invasion.
European reaction was more supportive, the strongest coming from Thatcher of Great Britain.
People had criticized President Bush for not acting before. He has now acted, and we should support him.
The toughest words, as expected, came from the Soviets.
This is a deplorable. It runs against the obligations of the United States under the United Nations.
And as for what's ahead, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Les Aspin, said tonight that U.S. troops could be required in Panama for up to a year. If it does drag on, much of the praise here may turn sour. Dan?
Bob Schieffer, thanks. One of Manuel Noriega's trusted advisors, Mario Ragnoni, said in a phone interview with CBS News today, and I quote, "Our game plan is to resist and to kill as many Americans as we can," end of quotation. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports this is the latest turning point in a long line of U.S. relations with Noriega, a man once paid with taxpayer money by U.S. intelligence, courted up through the Reagan-Bush administration, now wanted by U.S. Justice on drug charges.
By the time he strong-armed his way to power in 1983, Manuel Antonio Noriega had already been a CIA informant for years. The U.S. government considered him a key ally, important enough to command a visit from then Vice President George Bush. But Mr. Bush maintains, even though he was the nation's top drug buster at the time, he was not informed of what some other U.S. officials believed, that Noriega was deeply involved in drug trafficking.
For a long time, certain agencies of the U.S. government felt that General Noriega was more useful to them than the damage that he was doing in other areas. And for that reason, the United States government didn't move against him until quite late in the process.
And one way Noriega helped the U.S. was by supporting the Contras in Nicaragua. In an interview with 60 Minutes correspondent Mike Wallace, Noriega claimed he was pressured by former National Security Advisor John Poindexter.
The only thing that would save us from being hit both politically and economically by the U.S. would be if we allowed the Contras to be trained in Panama in their fight against Nicaragua.
And at the trial of former National Security Council aide Oliver North, the U.S. government admitted convincing Noriega to provide funds and other help for the Contras. But finally, this government could no longer ignore evidence that Colombian drug lords were paying Noriega huge sums to help them with shipments and money laundering.
Noriega used his position in Panama and the geographic location of Panama being necessary to certain drug operations to basically act as a middleman, if you will, to make his country available.
In 1988, Noriega was indicted by 2 Florida grand juries, but only today did this country move decisively to oust him.
This ends his career as a drug trafficker. He's not running drugs, he's not running Panama. At present, he's just running.
And now the U.S. still has the challenge of catching him and bringing him to trial, Dan.
Thanks, Rita. Our CBS News coverage of what's happening in Panama continues after these messages.
I knew it was for real, but I never thought I was going to win.
If you never thought you could win the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, think again, because your chances to win millions are on the way. You could win $10 million. Watch your mail for this house and enter the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes right away. On January 26th, you could be our next millionaire.
Real people win. I'm one of them.
Shoot some slices, shoot some shreds, shoot some salad, 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 salad shooter.
Presto Salad Shooter Slicer Shredder. Point and shoot right where you want. Clean up easy, dishwasher safe, store anywhere.
Salad shooter.
Now cordless rechargeable too.
Dad, a blade razor with a motor?
Yes, Tori, the Remington Electroblade. Vibrating twin blades feel like they're massaging your whiskers away or your money back.
Keep the money. I'll keep the Electroblade.
Razor sharp kid, eh? The Remington Electroblade.
U.S. officials, including the president, today talked up 4 specific objectives for the U.S. military strike in Panama: capturing Noriega as an indicted drug trafficker, protecting American lives, assisting what the United States insists is the legitimate and democratically elected government of Panama, and protecting the Panama Canal. CBS News correspondent Bruce Morton looks tonight at how the U.S. has been stating similar objectives through decades of involvement in Latin America.
In the last decade of the 90s, almost a century ago, U.S. troops went to Cuba. Teddy Roosevelt led the Rough Riders up San Juan Hill, and the United States remembered the Maine. Later, Roosevelt, as president, became a big booster of the Panama Canal, and U.S. troops went to Panama, beginning in 1908. The canal opened in 1914, and there's been a military presence there ever since. The U.S. Marines landed in Haiti in 1915 and stayed almost 20 years, landed in Nicaragua in 1912, and finally left in 1933. We intervened because U.S. citizens were threatened or because U.S. economic interests were, and sometimes as the big power in the region just to straighten things out down there.
As Woodrow Wilson once said upon intervening in Mexico, we must teach these people to elect good men.
The United States has sometimes pledged not to intervene, but we do anyway.
That American lives are in danger.
Lyndon Johnson sent the Marines to the Dominican Republic in 1965. They'd been there before to save lives, he said, and stop the spread of communism. We've maintained a military presence in Honduras, sending troops there often for training. Sometimes we've used surrogates, Cuban exiles at the Bay of Pigs, but often we've used troops. Ronald Reagan invaded Grenada in 1983 to topple a left-wing government.
The principle that a nation great in power can intervene was somehow at war with the other principle, which was especially American, that all peoples have a right to govern themselves and not to be interfered with.
This time, the U.S. is supporting a democratically elected government, and that may change the way Latin America reacts.
The conduct of the Panamanian government, of the new Panamanian government, would be critical insofar as how other Latin American countries react.
The lesson has always been, might makes right, when it works. Bruce Morton, CBS News, New York.
Norman, what's that?
Nothing, honey.
I asked a simple question. Norman, are you eating something?
It's nothing, honey.
He lies like a dog.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch. Crisp golden flakes glazed with sweet honey and real roasted peanuts.
Irene, what's that you're playing?
Nothing, honey. Two can play this little game.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
Anyone who drives at night knows how important road signage is to safety. That's why 3M is improving signs like this, with brighter signs like this, made with reflective materials invented by 3M to help you see better at night. In fact, the sign on the right is up to 10 times brighter than the sign on the left. And that makes a difference anyone can see. 3M Reflective Materials, another example of how a 3M innovation is working for you.
Oh, no. Not today.
All callers, please register at the desk.
I can't have this arthritis pain today. Good luck. Oh, please, not today. Anacin.
When relief is a must, reach for Anacin. The Anacin formula gives you more medicine than regular aspirin for hours of relief from minor arthritis pain. Anacin, when relief is a must.
There were 700 mourners in Alabama today for the funeral of murdered U.S. Federal Appeals Court Judge Robert Vance, a funeral marked by heavy security. Judge Vance was killed Saturday by the first of 4 parcel bombs received in the South. Federal officials said today that all 4 bombs were apparently mailed from Georgia. Authorities are still pursuing a possible racial motive in the case. Communist Romania tonight declared a state of emergency in Timișoara, the hotbed of dissent, after a reported demonstration by 100,000 Romanians. Some Romanian soldiers reportedly joined the protesters, and the remainder left the city tonight under white flags. The East German news agency said violent protests have spread to other cities and said the death toll from clashes in Romania over the last few days could reach 4,000. Romanian strongman Nicolae Ceausescu returned today from a trip to Iran. He went on television to blame the unrest on fascists and foreigners. In a final revised report, the Commerce Department today said the nation's economy grew at an annual rate of 3% in the year's third quarter.
It weighs 1/millionth of an ounce, yet it can take a 2,000-pound car and blow it right off the road. That's why you should drive the new four-wheel drive Subaru Legacy. Think of it as a 5-passenger snowmobile.
When Mom gets a cough and cold, everyone suffers.
Mom, Dad's ironing.
Time to doctor that cough with Robitussin.
Look, Mom's feeling better.
Robitussin, recommended by more doctors, pharmacists, and Dr. Mom.
It may be Red Lobster's most perfect meal. Petite Danish lobster tails. The sweetest ever. Plus flame-broiled shrimp. Delicious. Next, sizzling scampi. All this lobster and shrimp on one plate. Perfectly priced. Just $8.95 for a few weeks.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
And for the holidays, call for party platters to go. Ready in just 1 hour.
American Family. The only sweepstakes in America that's made its winners millionaires for 7 years running. No other sweepstakes. Only the one with my picture. First to bring you $1 million prizes, $2 million prizes, and $10 million prizes. David and Janice each won $10 million. You may win twice as much. $20 million. You heard right. $20 million, all for you. Enter at once.
The latest information, there are 15 U.S. servicemen dead, at least, in the invasion of Panama today, about 60 wounded. All part of the warfare that doesn't change. We fight with today's technology, but real mud, real blood, and real death is as old as war itself, and so are the waiting families of service personnel. Families that worry, families that weep. Lest we forget, Phil Jones reminds us.
Deck the halls with boughs of holly.
At a shopping center near Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the sudden deployment of loved ones to Panama, just as it was beginning to look like Christmas, brought mixed emotions.
I'm not worried about him. He knows what he's doing. This is what he trained for.
And other families around the country waited anxiously.
They were gone for 3 months before, but it was different, I guess. There wasn't anything going on. Now that there is, I'm scared.
Well, the most difficult part is just waiting to hear that he's okay and that the worst of this is over.
Sophina White's brother went on standby.
We should stay out of it, in a way, especially during Christmas. I know it sounds kind of weird, but come on, you know?
Carolyn Hodgkins watched television in Boston and worried about last night's phone call from her son in Panama.
He said he just called to say that he loved us, and just to watch the news, and if anything happened, he loved us.
Agree or disagree with President Bush and Panama?
In Los Angeles, callers to a talk show argued about the timing.
I think Bush picked a terrible time to play macho. 9 parents are going to have the saddest Christmas ever with their dead sons.
The 9 lives is a very expensive price. To get him out this week, I think it's a price well spent.
As wounded soldiers were arriving in San Antonio, military officials here at Fort Bragg were just beginning to set up a support system for the dependents of the men who had been sent to Panama.
What our job is to do is to resolve problems that family members may have as a result of their service member being away.
Even members of an 82nd Airborne Division finance unit were packing their bags this afternoon for possible deployment to Panama. A move that only added to speculation that many of the men will not be home in time for Christmas. Phil Jones, CBS News, Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
And that's part of our world. We'll have a special broadcast, Target Panama, with all the latest information right after your late local news tonight. Until then, Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News.
Tomorrow on CBS This Morning, we'll continue to cover the U.S. military action in Panama. Join Harry Smith and Kathleen Sullivan tomorrow on CBS This Morning. This is CBS.